was paid off and paid for.
So
that was the problem with the whole thing.
How about Sidney Dean? He seemed kind of heartbroken.
You know what? These old men and old women, and I don't mean that as sexist, and I don't mean that as ageist. They're at the end of their careers. They thought they were doing the right thing, and the only way they could survive was to go along with the corporations. George Stoney was with NYU, and unfortunately, DeeDee Halleck was his acolyte.
Mm-hmm.
She knew about the land use agreements. She mentioned them. She knew that the only way that she could get any type of compensation was to challenge the land use agreement, the flip of MNN's property into a casino gaming channel, so that she could get money for a documentary or some type to keep her golden parachute in her retirement. I don't forget her for doing that. So many people have sold out, Paula. These people, at the end of their golden ages, are seeing it all gone away. And when George Stoney died, DeeDee Halleck had nothing. They threw her out of MNN.
Right.
That's why she attacked.
Right. Does what Dean says make sense to you, Lydia, according to your research?
Well, I just want to give the audience orient them a little bit. And some of the stuff, and thank you, Paula, because some of the information that you're giving us about the city is the franchisor.
Right.
And it goes into its jurisdiction is the city that it controls, and the franchisee is Time Warner Cable. So you have this was explained to me in much simpler language by a person who was there, Terry Blankert. Is an attorney, and he was a city clerk out in Flint, Michigan. And I called him and asked him for help. What's happening right now is DeeDee Halleck is suing Time Warner Cable. So she's in the Southern District of New York with her complaint. And it's very important to all of us producers, because if there's a negative outcome in her complaint, in her lawsuit, it will form a barrier for all of us. So DeeDee Halleck was banned, and then all of us heard about it, got together, and started to organize, not only to protest DeeDee Halleck's banning, but also to protect our interests and to preserve the diversity of voices at MNN, because, as Randy Steele correctly pointed out, now we have 5 media companies who own everything. Where are our diverse voices, and where's the sources of information like me and Dean and Paula and Randy Steele that the public doesn't hear about without the PE&G channels? So one of the things, so DeeDee Halleck goes down to the Southern District of New York, and she's filing her lawsuit. And what they're saying, what the city says in response is, oh, there's no state actor. And what they mean is there's no city, state, or federal actor. This is all private stuff. And I'm like, wait a minute. That's not what Terry Blankert explained to me. So when we were unionizing and organizing in summer of 2014, I called up Mr. Terry Blankert out in Flint, Michigan, and he started to explain things to me very simply. And he said, Lydia, listen, I'm going to get you through this very quickly, and I'm going to dumb it down for you, which I was grateful for. And he's like, look, it's back, about 30 years ago. Everybody wants cable. Why? Because you can get pornography, and everybody wanted porn. So we've got, here I am out in Flint, Michigan, and it's the city of Flint, and we've got 30 or so underfunded cable companies, and they're all stringing cable wire, and they're all digging up the streets because, there's demands for this. Now, what should we as a city have done? Should we have stepped back and let the free market just do what it wants to do? There's going to be utter chaos while these cable companies are stringing, these underfunded cable companies are competing with each other, throwing up cable wire, digging up the streets, making all kinds of, competing for customers. It's total utter chaos until some of them go out of business, when there's a shakedown and then a consolidation of a few companies. And the time that it takes for that to happen, there's going to be utter chaos in our city.
So Lydia, just a second. We have to do station ID.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, just quickly, this is WIOFLP, Woodstock 104. And this is Farther Down the Rabbit Hole with Paula Gloria.
Thanks, Lydia. Sorry.
No, that's
We have
fine.
to do it by federal regulations every hour.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
have a license.
So what Terry Blankard explained was the city, and then the city actors, the state actors, and ultimately the federal actors got involved. As you're reading, the city is the franchisor. It's the jurisdiction. It owns this area, or it has control of this area. And the franchisee that it's entering into an agreement with, and there's actually a committee, a franchise and concession review committee, that has control over the structure of the franchisees. So the city is the state. The city, state, and federal actors get involved, and they decided which companies were going to get rich. And in exchange, these companies were supposed to provide public access stations. So that's sort of the dumbed-down version that, explained this to me. And then what's happening, as Terry Blankard started to elaborate, is this went on for a while, but now, preying on the short, attention spans and short memory of the general public, now, a couple, 10 years have gone by, 20 years have gone by, and the greedy corporations want to take it back. They want to get public access stations back. So how are they going to start? They've been rolling out a corporate strategy for the last 6, 7, or 8 years, and this is according to Terry Blankard, an attorney out in Flint, Michigan, who's been watching it from the inside, and he says, so how are they going to take it back? And one of the ways they decided to take it back in Flint, Michigan, was they got rid of the studios where you could produce public access programming. So they took away the studio. So where would the public access producers make their programming? There was no place to make it. So eventually, public access just sort of fell by the wayside.
Wasn't that in violation of the franchise agreement, though?
They didn't care.
They didn't
because
care.
You see, the franchise agreement was to provide access, not to provide a studio where you would actually make your programming. So they actually went to the state legislature. As I remember the conversations I had with Terry Blankard, but they went to the state legislature and they got state laws passed. So it was kind of like deceptive practices, not really honest, because we're not really taking away public access. I mean, we're letting you have access. We're just not giving you a place to make your programming. So if you can't make it, well, then the public access channels aren't going to be used, and if they're not going to be used, then we should just take it back. So Terry Blankard was trying to help us, because he said to me, listen, we went to sleep in Flint, Michigan, and we didn't fight for public access, and we lost it. So you guys in Manhattan, you have to fight for this so that we don't lose it.
He said nobody was protecting the equity interests of the public. That was the words I heard him, and I recorded it, and I put it up on my TV show before they took it down.
Exactly. So we were just unionizing to because we were appalled that DeeDee Halleck was banned, and then we started asking. We started going to the history a little bit more. We found, oh my goodness, that there were other producers who were banned, 5 years ago and 10 years ago. So we started unionizing and organizing to say you can't just ban somebody without a hearing. As we're organizing, guess what? All the union organizers, me, Paula, Dean, we all got banned. We're like, so we, for sticking up for the constitutionally protected and guaranteed rights of DeeDee Halleck, we all got banned. So as DeeDee now fast forward goes into federal court, and she's saying, well, my constitutionally protected right to free speech was violated. Purportedly, they banned her because she made a video that was critical of MNN, and she put it on YouTube. I love this. So she made a video and didn't even put it on public access, but put it on YouTube.
Well, she couldn't put it on public access because none of the public access producers had the courage to do it. I did it. But I had a very good YouTube channel anyway, so I always felt that was my fallback.
But I mean, she produced a video, put it on YouTube, and they banned her from public access. I mean, come on, really?
Lydia, they used to, if you put a website on your TV show, on your cable show, they would take you down. There used to be somebody sitting. Wasn't that true, Dean? You were more of that epoch than I am.
Yes, they actually would ban you if you cited a website. They said that you were reciting a commercial link to your show.
Right.
And Randy, I'm going blonde after this show.
Welcome to the club.
Dean, is MNN the third party that Crosswalks was? Like, if Bloomberg was offering its programming free through Crosswalks, would you say that Crosswalks was supposed to protect the interests of the public versus this commercial gobbling up? Is that similar to what happened to MNN?
It's Black History Month, folks. I'm going to say something that's going to probably jam your senses. At the time of 1997, when this went down, I was dating a young Argentinian. She was the only licensed English teacher in District 10 in the Bronx, and she was up for tenure in the UFT, United Federation of Teachers. And so they were trying to fire her. Now, this girl was one of the quote poets of the downtown. Okay. So I went into her school because I'm born in D.C. and I was raised as a nuclear chemist and all these things. And I've been always in the door. And I found throughout the schools, it was just not only in my fiance's school, but in all the schools that were catering to the urban youth, there were no textbooks. There was no licensed teachers. They had substitute teachers without any type of education for teaching. It was a false education, as I forgot who put it. Who said miseducation? That was a wonderful black singer. Okay? So at the time that Crosswalks was sold, it was supposed to be supplying educational programming to the schools.
Okay, similar to when Lydia pointed out at our first producers meeting that MNN's purpose was to find the ratings. Is that right, Lydia? You remember that part that you said?
Yeah, but you know what's even more compelling is Paula Gloria made a video of our first attempts to organize a producers union.
It was
and
Loren
one of the
Hall,
questions.
by the way.
Pardon me?
Loren Hall that did the miseducation. Loren Hall of black people, the great record.
What's that to do with Crosswalks?
Well,
I wondered if
Crosswalks was supposed to be the television station that supplemented public education to the schools.
Oh, I see. That's how they got their foot in the door.
You were supposed to get English exercises, math exercises, history, civics. Everything was supposed to be piped in on little TVs to the students.
Right. Well, Lydia, I didn't really feel I was there to unionize. I was just there to protect my intellectual property and my traffic, and I noticed that because YouTube was showing me what the hits were like, it was a real revelation, and you began to ascertain what the public wanted to hear, and if you were good at making that kind of thing, you could do it. If you didn't want to do it, you weren't interested, you'd say, screw it, I don't care if that audience goes away, that's not what I want to do. But knowing ratings was really important because it was a way that the public can speak up for what they want.
Yes.
But what you asked was
the first franchise was supposed to supply you with your ratings. That was directly in the contract.
Yeah, okay. And you were on that squeaky speakerphone because by that time, Lydia's little cell phone, I pointed out that here we have this beautiful conference room with a nice speakerphone there, but we're not allowed to use the landline speakerphone. But Lydia always has a workaround solution, so she had her little cell phone up. Fortunately, we had a shotgun mic, and both you and Molly Cheshire were on the line. And Dean says, greetings from MNN Siberian Gulag.
That was after he had been banned.
After he'd been banned, but
the most compelling question that Paula Gloria asked is, why is MNN Manhattan Neighborhood Network afraid of Lidya Radin? Because I pointed out, as all this is happening, and this is all, people are complaining and grumbling. Well, for the last 2 or 3 years, we were supposed to have a representative on the board, and her name is Vanessa Corwin. So I was asking, well, what is our representative doing about this? And as it came out in our first couple meetings, it turns out that Vanessa Corwin was casting her votes, but she never talked to us, her constituency. Now, the founding documents of MNN, the Manhattan Neighborhood Network, was that there was supposed to be a representative on the board who would represent the interests and protect the interests of the producers. Now, because Vanessa Corwin never talked to the producers, in fact, she was told not to speak to us, do you love it? Then any vote, and she was told how to vote, then all her votes, any contract that MNN entered into in the last 2 or 3 years is all null and void because Vanessa Corwin and Dan Coughlin and the other members of the board violated the founding documents. So I'm the only one who's talking about this. I'm like, well, wait a minute, who's our representative, and why isn't she, sending out us a little newsletter? Where are her office hours? How come she doesn't come out and tell us what's going on? So Paula and Joe went to try to attend a board meeting, which they were locked out of.
No, we got into it. DeeDee Halleck was locked out of it. By that time, Joe was doing really good in law. They had taken his show down for 2 months, and I didn't even realize it until I put in a show, and they said, his show's been off for 2 months. And that was that dovetailed the very first time the fraudulent foreclosure was starting to happen. So they probably figured that we weren't going to be fighting that. We fought that, and then we fought. They were saying that I had to produce 5 days a week, and Joe only had once a week. So I was under the gun for more programming, and so I put some of the pot talks on my time slot. But that was because I was up here in Woodstock with Randy Steele, and she was doing such a wonderful job teching for us, and we were getting such great material that I truly felt that I owed it to my audience to know what I was up to. So it didn't feel like anything at all wrong. So I put some of the pot talks with Joe Barton on my time slot. Now, I should have been the one taken down, but they took down Joe. You know why? Because mine was too popular. Mm-hmm. So anyway, go on.
So
you were very popular. And I have to say this to everybody. Paula Gloria became the queen of public access. She was the bronze in everybody's blonde hair.
And then it got very controversial when I hooked up with Joe, because he opened my eyes up to whole new worlds. Love. Yeah, right, love.
Paula took over that spot from Robin Bird, I guess.
Anyway, Lydia...
See, I go all the way back to Channel J. I know more than any of you guys think I do.
Yeah, we love Channel B.
B and C.
Isn't that something?
Those were the original public access channels back in the 1970s, where great shows like TV Party were on.
Eventually, those archives will be valuable, right?
Mm.
We hope.
If they're still around.
Or if they haven't all been trademarked and copyrighted by their respective owners.
But for the sake of education and legacy, they should always be available. I think my deep study of all of this, I appreciate what you say, Lydia, about how Terry Blanchard made it simple. But and that was kind of how I understood it for a lot of years, but now I'm understanding it very differently, that it's the free speech that's the rock upon which commercial entities stem. It's not that the commercial entities are so powerful and rich, and Rupert Murdoch and these guys that everybody, quivers and shakes, Donald Trump, because they're so rich. Because if it's not based on the public's welfare, it's commercial, and you see that all real law is grounded on public access. Otherwise, a society that is, only catering to commercial interests, it's like a ticking time bomb. And maybe you could describe what happened on Thursday to really illustrate that, because my understanding is you and Dean were in the audience. You were very polite. Do you want to?
It's about summer of 2014, and we're all getting banned. And DeeDee decides that she's going to sue MNN for violations of her free speech, and she files a lawsuit.
A year later, though.
Yeah, it's about November. She files her lawsuit. And the real shame here is, as we're collecting all this information, we're doing our notices of claim to the city, and we're collecting up affidavits, and producers are coming to us, and her issue is she was banned without a hearing, and they're trying to silence her. So if she had simply attached to her complaint our notices of claim and our affidavits, she could have asked for a judgment on the pleadings, because there is no triable issues of fact. Now, she goes into this hearing on
Lydia,
Thursday.
what does that mean, triable issues of fact?
There's no issues of fact. You usually have a trial because you want to determine what the facts are. Well, there's no controversy here. I mean,
here's the claims, there's the dates, they were all notarized.
There's no controversy. The only defense the city has is there's no state actor. I'm like, because she's suing under 42 U.S.C. 1983 to 1988, which are your civil rights claims. She's saying that, they violated her civil rights, and they're trying to silence her free speech by banning her because she's, presenting viewpoints that they don't like. So,
let me clarify, as a Jesuit attorney, what Lydia is saying about DeeDee Halleck. DeeDee Halleck is saying that the state has stopped her free speech, but in order to do that, you have to name a person. And DeeDee, in her papers, never said, X person did this to me. This person who was this officer of the city did this to me. So that's what Lydia's talking about.
So she filed. Now, before this happened, I have to give a little background. Before this happened, as we're organizing, we in January and February of 2014 and March, as we're going towards August and September of 2014, we had meetings at Gail Brewer's office. Why? Because Gail Brewer is the Manhattan Borough President, and she's responsible for the franchise. So we're having meetings at Gail Brewer's office, and there are producers. Amber Johnson came with us. Josh Volinsky came with
Gloria
us. Gloria Messer. It was me, DeeDee Halleck, Joe Barton, Paula Gloria. Where we had a meeting at Gail Brewer's, and we started laying out, listen, the Manhattan Borough President, you have to come down to MNN. And the first, we had a meeting with Jessica Mates, who's the chief of staff for Gail Brewer's office. Ultimately, I had conversations with the general counsel there. And the first thing they admitted, and we weren't trying to pressure Gail Brewer, the Manhattan Borough President, at all, but she gets to appoint 2 members of the board of MNN. She hadn't done that yet, so we brought all these issues to the civil rights issues to her attention. We brought the fact that Vanessa Corwin, our representative, was not representing us. And there was supposed to be a letter written from Gail Brewer to Manhattan Neighborhood Network, and I asked that we all get to see a draft of the letter so we would be all on the same page.
Oh, just a second, just to illustrate how Vanessa and all that, when we went to that board meeting that Joe and I got into, and we came out, and DeeDee was sitting there, they were not allowed to talk to producers. The board members were not allowed to talk to producers.
That's ridiculous.
The very person that was appointed to represent our rights was not allowed to talk to us.
Right.
That's absurd.
Right.
It's absurd.
That's what I wanted to illustrate. And in that meeting, by the way, I want to put this in. NYU was there, and they were asking Dan Coughlin.
Stoney is from NYU, by the way.
Right. Well, so NYU was asking Dan Coughlin if MNN had unlimited bandwidth, and he said he did. Later on, when I was asking if MNN would archive our shows like YouTube did, Greg Sutton said it took too much bandwidth, and I just said, I heard Dan Coughlin say at the board meeting, which is supposed to be public, that MNN had unlimited bandwidth. I don't know if it does anymore. But anyway.
That's what was negotiated for the sale of our channels. And by the way, everybody, and I don't want to cut off Lydia because she's so good, Dan Coughlin sold our public access channels to Al Gore. Channel 57 was sold to Al Gore, and then he flipped it to Al Jazeera within 1 month.
Okay, there you go.
And that was, thanks, Dean, because that's another issue that DeeDee Halleck was bringing up and that we were all concerned about, that our public access studios were being rented for commercial interests. We even had shows. They effectively got rid of public access in Los Angeles, but we had somebody syndicating a show out of Los Angeles who were like, wait a minute, this is Manhattan Neighborhood Network. It's supposed to the stated mission on MNN's website was to give voice or free speech to people who lived in Manhattan.
Right,
so
that was Stephanie Miller, right?
Yeah.
I think that what was so heartbreaking is Joe Friendly has begged for years to go right after Amy Goodman, and they would put anything but Joe Friendly after Amy Goodman. So it does seem like a plan that Dean's talking about to strip the authentic voices of New York.
Oh, yes, and in fact, Amy Goodman is illegally... Now, everybody loves Amy Goodman, except for the fact that they don't understand that she airs twice a day on MNN, which is illegal.
Yeah.
And she airs at prime time.
Yeah.
So it's a political statement which you can't do on a nonprofit.
Oh, it goes even deeper than that.
These are commercial statements when they're renting out the studios and the public access producers are kicked off because someone's coming in to pay money to rent the studios. That's not what the public access studios were there for.
Oh, I got a good one for you. On the night that Obama is reelected, the black president, I have an entire black show, the premier black shoe designer of high-end shoes, I mean really beautiful, 20 black models, and we are kicking